St. Petersburg, Russia is the city of grandeur, history, and breathtaking architecture. Founded by Peter the Great in 1703, it served as the imperial capital of Russia for over 2 centuries. Visit historical and cultural landmarks like Peter and Paul Fortress, Church of the Spilled Blood, Nevsky Prospekt, and Alexander Nevsky Lavra. Step inside majestic palaces like Winter Palace, Catherine Palace, and Peterhof, as well as the Hermitage Museum, home to one of the largest and most prestigious art museums. A river and canal tour in St. Petersburg is a fantastic way to experience the city's stunning architecture and rich history from a unique perspective. A 1 to 2 hour guided boat tour covering the city's waterways, offering views of the iconic landmarks like Winter Palace and Peter and Paul Fortress is recommended. The St. Petersburg Metro is efficient and covers most of the city. It is known for its deep stations and beautiful architecture. The buses and trolley buses in St. Petersburg is extensive but can be crowded. In this vlog, I'll be taking a Neva River Cruise, visiting the Peter and Paul Fortress, Church of the Spilled Blood, Alexander Nevsky Lavra, and Nevsky Prospekt. St. Petersburg, formerly known as Petrograd and later Leningrad, is the second largest city in Russia after Moscow. It is situated along the river Neva. It is situated on the river Neva and at the head of the Gulf of Finland on the Baltic Sea. The city has a population of more than 5.6 million residents as of 2021, with more than 6.4 million people living in the metropolitan area. St. Petersburg is the 4th most populous city in Europe and the most populous city on the Baltic Sea, and the world's northernmost city of more than 1 million residents. As the former capital of the Russian Empire and a historically strategic port, it is governed as a federal city. The historic center of St. Petersburg and related groups of monuments constitute a UNESCO World Heritage Site. St. Petersburg, Russia has a fascinating history that spans over 3 centuries. Founded by Tsar Peter the Great on May 27, 1703, the city was established as Russia's window to Europe and quickly became the capital of the Russian Empire. Peter the Great captured Swedish fortresses in the region during the Great Northern War and built the Peter and Paul Fortress, marking the city's beginning. He invited European architects to design the city, heavily influencing the layout and architecture. St. Petersburg became the capital of Russia in 1712, replacing Moscow. It was during the reign of Catherine II, also known as Catherine the Great, that people began calling the city Magnificent Petersburg. The Winter Palace, the Admiralty, Nevsky Prospekt, the granite embankments along the river and canals, and the bronze horsemen, the famous statue of Peter the Great, were all built while she was on the throne. However, these advancements in St. Petersburg's development were stunted by Napoleonic invasion. Nonetheless, during the period, the Mikhailovsky Palace, the Adriansky Theater, and the Senate and Synod were built. The construction of the Palace Square was completed, and the grounds were broken for the construction of the St. Isaac's Cathedral. The city played a central role in the Russian Revolution of 1917, leading to the fall of monarchy. The city was renamed Petrograd in 1914 and later Leningrad in 1924 after Lenin passed away. During World War II, Leningrad endured a brutal 900-day siege by German forces, resulting in immense suffering and loss of life. Even before the start of the 20th century, St. Petersburg had become a truly European city, a center of both industry and culture. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the city reverted to its original name, St. Petersburg, in 1991. St. Petersburg is now Russia's second most important economic, scientific, and cultural center after Moscow, and one of the most beautiful cities in the world. St. Petersburg is a relatively young city with a little over 300 years of history. However, in these centuries of rapid growth and development, St. Petersburg has forged its own path, evolving into a timeless city, inimitable in its beauty and harmony. It is elusive and enigmatic, a truly unique city in Russia's history. For more than 200 years, it was the capital of the Great Russian Empire and remains the country's cultural and spiritual center to this day. Here are some of the top attractions to visit in St. Petersburg. A Neva River Cruise is one of the best ways to experience St. Petersburg. Often dubbed the Venice of the North, these cruises offer a stunning view of the city's historic landmarks, including the Winter Palace, Peter and Paul Fortress, and the Hermitage Museum. The State Hermitage is one of the world's largest art and history museums. It boasts a huge collection of approximately 3 million objects of art and cultural artifacts from around the world. The Catherine Palace is the historic and compositional centerpiece of the Palace and Park complex at Tsarskoye Selo, a splendid example of Russian Baroque architectural style. This imperial residence was one of the Russian monarch's most beloved palaces, which belonged to Catherine the Great. Peterhof is the summer garden that was planted in 1704 by the decree of Peter the Great. It is St. Petersburg's first monument to landscape design. The summer garden contains Peter the Great's summer palace. Peter and Paul Fortress was founded in 1703. It is the place from which the city of St. Petersburg grew. It is unparalleled in terms of Russian architecture. The Peter and Paul Cathedral, the central building of the fortress, contains tombs of the Romanov dynasty. Church of the Spilled Blood is a unique monument to Alexander II, the Liberator. The Church of the Savior on Blood is the more formal name for the church. It dominates the architectural ensemble in the center of St. Petersburg. St. Isaac's Cathedral is St. Petersburg's largest Orthodox cathedral. It's a unique heritage asset which was built in 1858 by architect Auguste de Montferrand. Alexander Nevsky Lavra, the Holy Trinity Monastery, is a unique architectural monument, the first and largest friary built in St. Petersburg. Nevsky Prospekt is St. Petersburg's main avenue, a 4.5-kilometer long street that runs from Admiralty to Alexander Nevsky Monastery. It's known for its rich history, architecture, and vibrant atmosphere. iVisa is the best online service to obtain travel documents and visas to any country online. It's fast and easy to use. iVisa processes documents in 24 hours and provides free support to all customers. Use my link to get your travel visas online. The second largest city in Russia, St. Petersburg is the country's cultural heart. View splendid architectural gems like the Windsor Palace and Kazan Cathedral, and give yourself plenty of time to browse the world-renowned art collection of the Hermitage. Sprawling across the Neva River Delta, St. Petersburg offers enough art, nightlife, fine dining, and cultural destinations for many repeat visits. Use my link to plan your trip to St. Petersburg, Russia using TripAdvisor. The Neva River is a major waterway in northwestern Europe, flowing from Lake Ladoga to the Gulf of Finland. Despite only being 74 kilometers long, it is one of the longest rivers in Europe by volume. The river passes through St. Petersburg, shaping the city's landscape and history. Historically, the Neva was part of the trade route from Scandinavia to Byzantine, known as the road from the Varangians to the Greeks. It was also the site of the Battle of the Neva in 1240, where Prince Alexander Nevsky defeated an invading Swedish army. Later in 1703, Peter the Great founded St. Petersburg at its mouth, making the river central to the city's development. The first architects tasked with building the city correctly assessed the value of urban development along the Neva. The river became the main architectural axis for the new Russian capital. It began with the large-scale construction of embankments when its banks were straightened and covered with earth. For 3 centuries, the embankments edged further and further into the river. Near the Summer Garden, for example, by 50 meters, at the Winter Palace by 90 meters, on the split of Vasilevsky Island by 120 meters, and on Perogovskaya embankment about 150 to 200 meters. The first embankments were made of wood, but from the 1760s they began to be replaced with granite cladding. Thus, the famous granite embankments of the Neva were born, and quickly became a feature of St. Petersburg's cityscape. The Neva is lined with granite embankments, and more than 20 bridges span its waters, many of which are bascule bridges that open at night for ships to pass. Watching the bridges rise during the white nights of June and July is a famous St. Petersburg experience. At the beginning of the 20th century, electric trams rode over the frozen Neva, and the river was traditionally used for skating. Today, in some particularly warm winters, the Neva does not completely freeze. In such weather, ships and pleasure boats are still able to sail on the river and its channels, even in December. In summer, about 500 boats are used for transporting tourists alone. Almost all the major attractions in St. Petersburg are either directly beside the water or can be easily seen from a boat. Among them are the Peter and Paul Fortress, the split of Vasilevsky Island, the cruiser Aurora, the Winter Palace, the Bronze Horseman, the Summer Garden, the Alexander Nevsky Lavra, Smolny Cathedral, the Marble Palace, the Admiralty, the Academy of Arts, and many more. A Neva River Cruise is one of the best ways to experience St. Petersburg. It's often called the Venice of the North. One of the most desired trips in St. Petersburg is a journey along the rivers and canals. Many of the most grandiose buildings of the northern capital are found here on the most famous granite embankments in the city center. That's why exploring the rivers and channels is an integral part of any excursion route. The most picturesque outlook on all sides of the city open from here. Boat trip via St. Petersburg's rivers and channels will pass by Dort Sophie's Bridge, through the Great Neva, along the Peter and Paul Fortress. Guests will also see the Hermitage, the Summer Garden, and many more popular attractions along route. The route is circular, and the tour will return to the same place it starts from. Daytime sightseeing cruises are perfect for admiring the city's architecture and learning about its history, while drawbridge cruises allow you to witness spectacular opening of St. Petersburg's drawbridges at night. During evening and night cruises, you can enjoy the illuminated cityscape, especially during the famous white nights in summer. Hydrofoil to Peterhof is a fast and scenic way to reach Peterhof Palace, known for its stunning fountains. You can book tickets online through services like Nevatrip, or you can look at other Neva River cruises from other websites. St. Petersburg is the city of contrast and beauty. You have not truly felt the national spirit of Russia if you didn't visit this place. The city is compared to Venice, and for a good reason. There are lots of rivers and canals that run through the city. The most famous river is the Neva River. Just imagine what picturesque views you'll be able to see during a Neva River boat ride. Nevatrip offers a variety of ways to explore the Neva River in St. Petersburg. Visit their website for more detail. The Peter and Paul Fortress is the original citadel of St. Petersburg. It was founded by Peter the Great in 1703 on Hare Island along the Neva River. It was designed by Domenico Trezzini and built as a star fortress, though it never saw a battle. Key features of the Peter and Paul Fortress include the Peter and Paul Cathedral, which is the burial site of nearly all Russian emperors from Peter the Great to Nicholas II. The Trubetskoy Bastion Prison, which held political prisoners. Naroishkin Bastion Cannon, which fires a daily noon shot, a tradition dating back to the 18th century. And granite embankments, which offer stunning views of the Neva River and city skyline. It was the first structure to be built in St. Petersburg and thus the birthplace of the city, though it never served its intended defensive functions. Instead, it has a rich, hugely varied, and sometimes sinister history as a military base, a home of government departments, the burial ground of Russian imperial family, a site of groundbreaking scientific experiments, and a forbidding jail that held some of Russia's most prominent political prisoners. Today, the Peter and Paul Fortress is for the most part under the autonomy of St. Petersburg Museum of History, with a number of permanent and temporary exhibitions charting the various aspects of the compound's past. While the central visitor attraction is undoubtedly the Peter and Paul Cathedral, one of St. Petersburg's most striking buildings, there is plenty within the walls of the fortress to keep both children and adults occupied for a full day at least. During the October Revolution of 1917, the fortress played a role in the Bolshevik takeover when shells were fired at Winter Palace. The Cathedral of Saints Peter and Paul is the oldest church in St. Petersburg. It's also the second tallest building in the city after the TV tower. It is intimately linked to both the history of the city and the Romanov dynasty, as it is the home to the graves of nearly all the rulers of Russia since Peter the Great. Work began on the first wooden church to be erected on the site just a month after St. Petersburg officially was founded, and the church was consecrated on April 1st, of 1704. In 1712, the current stone Peter and Paul Cathedral started to be built to a design by Domenico Trezzini. This one took slightly longer to build, 20 years in fact, and was finally consecrated on June 29, 1733. In the summer, the beach is a popular picnic site, and it also hosts a variety of events, festivals, and concerts, including the respected Petrojazz annual festival. Today, the Peter and Paul Fortress is a part of St. Petersburg Museum of History, hosting exhibitions on the city's past. Church of the Resurrection of Jesus Christ, better known as Church of the Savior on the Spilled Blood, or even just Church on the Blood, as it marks the spot where Alexander II was fatally wounded in an attempt on his life on March 1st, 1881. Designed by Alfred Parland in the style of 16th and 17th century Russian churches, the Church of the Spilled Blood provides a stark, some would say jarring, contrast to its surrounding of Baroque, classical, and modernist architecture. The project was estimated to cost 3.6 million rubles, but ended up costing 4.6 million rubles, mainly from the extravagant collection of mosaics. One of the most impressive elements of the church is the extravagant shrine constructed on the spot where Alexander II lost his life, which has maintained a special place within the church's interior. It was constructed to Parland's design and completed in July of 1907. 4 columns of gray-violet jasper serve as the base of the shrine. Rising up the shrine, small rectangular columns unite the carving stone awning and decorating mosaic icons with images of the patron saint of the Romanov family. The columns are supported by a frieze and cornice and stone-carved pediment with faces of jasper along the corners. The church has an outstanding and varied collection of mosaic icons. Several icons were completed in the traditions of academic paintings, modernist style, and Byzantine icon paintings. Alexander II's heir, Alexander III, declared his intention to erect a church on the site in his father's memory, and moreover to have the church built in traditional Russian style, in distinction to what he saw as contaminating Western influence of St. Petersburg. After Alexander III had rejected several architects' design, Archimadri Agnati gave the job to Parland but made the design himself. The church's final composition drew heavily from St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow, Vladimir Cathedral, and Kiev. Construction began in 1883. After Revolution, the church, despite becoming an official cathedral in 1923, was looted. The church was closed in 1932 and essentially turned into a garbage dump. There were rumors that the church would be torn down. Damage from World War II and the siege of Leningrad can be still seen on the church's walls. After World War II, the church was used as a warehouse for the small opera theater. The valuable shrine was almost destroyed, 4 jasper columns with mosaics mounting them, and part of the balustrade were all that remained. On July 20th, 1970, the church was made a branch of the St. Isaac Cathedral Museum, and 80% of the church's extraordinary restoration was funded by profits from St. Isaac's. The decades of deterioration and the restoration culminated in the dramatic reopening of the church in August of 1997, where thousands of eager visitors swamped the church. Today, the church functions as both a museum and a place of worship, and due to its historical significance, it's worth a visit. St. Isaac's Cathedral was originally the city's main church and the largest cathedral in Russia. It was built between 1818 and 1858 by the French-born architect Auguste Monteferrand to be one of the most impressive landmarks of the Russian imperial capital. 180 years later, the gilded dome of St. Isaac's still dominates the skyline of St. Petersburg. Although the cathedral is considered smaller than the newly rebuilt Church of the Christ the Savior in Moscow, it boasts much more impressive facades and interior. Originally built as a cathedral, it was converted into a museum by the Soviet government in 1931. Church services were resumed in a side chapel in the 1990s, but the main building remains a museum. In 2017, there was an attempt to transfer the cathedral back to the Russian Orthodox Church, but the opposition prevented it. St. Isaac's Cathedral was designed in late neoclassical style with influences from Byzantine and Greek architecture. It features massive granite columns made from single pieces of red granite. The gilded dome is one of the largest in the world and dominates the city skyline. The interior is adorned with mosaics, paintings, and columns made of malachite and lapis lazuli. A largely brightly colored stained glass window of the resurrection of the resurrected Christ takes pride of place inside the main altar. The church, designed to accommodate 14,000 standing worshippers, was closed in the early 1930s and reopened as a museum. Today, church services are only held here on major religious occasions. Foreign visitors should buy entrance tickets just inside the right-handed door in the southern facade and not at the street-level ticket booths. Visitors can climb the 300 steps to the colonnade for breathtaking views of the city. The colonnade of the St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg offers one of the most panoramic views of the city. Standing 43 meters high, it provides a 360-degree view of major landmarks and landscapes below. Visitors can climb 300 steps to reach the viewing platform, which is formed around the cathedral's cupola by 24 massive granite columns. Although the climb is steep, the reward is breathtaking. Want to visit St. Petersburg, Russia? Join Express to Russia for a journey of a lifetime to St. Petersburg, the gem of Russia. Sometimes called the City of Tsars or Northern Venice, it is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. All of their tours to St. Petersburg are fully customizable and can be adjusted to fit any budget. 20 of their most popular tours are listed below. The NORDVPN service allows you to connect to 5,230 plus servers in 56 plus countries. It secures your internet data with military-grade encryption and ensures your web activity remains private and helps bypass restrictions in internet-restricted countries. VPNs create an encrypted tunnel for your data and protect your online identity by hiding your IP address and allow you to use public Wi-Fi hotspots safely. NordVPN is perfect for digital nomads that need to connect to public Wi-Fi for work and will ensure that your privacy is safe online. Use my links to find out more about NordVPN and to get a free trial. Alexander Nevsky Lavra is St. Petersburg's oldest and most significant monastery, founded by Peter the Great in 1710, named after Alexander Nevsky, a revered Russian military leader and saint. The Alexander Nevsky Monastery complex is home to some of the oldest buildings in the city, as well as to cemeteries which contain the graves to some of the giants of Russian culture, including Tchaikovsky, Dotkovsky, and Glinka. The monastery was founded in July of 1710, 7 years to the foundation of St. Petersburg by Peter the Great, near the spot where contemporary Swedish maps showed the Swedish fort Landskrona had stood. This was during the Northern War between Russia and Sweden, so it was a symbolically important location, especially as it had been sacked in 1301 by an army from Novgorod under Prince Andrei, son of legendary Russian leader Alexander Nevsky, during a previous war. In 1712, the first church was built in wood on the site of future monastery and consecrated in Peter's presence on March 25, 1713. The monastery began working shortly afterwards. In 1750, Empress Elizabeth ordered that a silver shrine be built to shelter the holy remains. The shrine, using an incredible 1.5 tons of pure silver, was decorated with symbols of the famous battle on ice fought on Lake Peloponnes in 1242 and other of Alexander's victories. The shrine was moved to a new cathedral in 1790, and in 1797 Emperor Paul gave the monastery its current rank, the highest in the Orthodox hierarchy, and the name the Alexander Nevsky Monastery of the Holy Spirit. In 1724, a new church was designed by Italian architect Domenico Trezzini. The church was named for Alexander Nevsky, considered a saint by the Russian Orthodox Church, whose remains were brought to the church by the ancient city of Vladimir in a journey that took several months. The day the remains were moved into the new church were celebrated each year as a holiday. By the beginning of the 20th century, the territory of the monastery complex was home to an impressive 16 churches. Today, only 5 survive. The Holy Trinity Cathedral, the Church of Annunciation, the Church of St. Lazarus, the Church of St. Nicholas, the Church of Holy Mother of God, and the Joy of All Those Who Mourn, which is over the monastery gates. Like many centers of orthodoxy, the monastery suffered at the hands of the revolution. Happily though, much has survived and restoration work has been ongoing in recent years. During Soviet times, many of its treasures were looted and the silver sarcophagus of Alexander Nevsky was moved to the Hermitage Museum. Nevsky Prospekt is St. Petersburg's main avenue and one of the best-known streets in Russia. Cutting through the historic center of the city, it runs from Admiralty to Moscow Railway Station and then after to the Alexander Nevsky Monastery. In the very first days of St. Petersburg, it was simply the beginning of the road to the ancient city of Novgorod, but it quickly became adorned with beautiful buildings, squares, and bridges and became the very center of the bustling, rapidly growing city. Nevsky Prospekt gradually widens as you travel along its length towards the river and is lined with some of St. Petersburg's most impressive buildings. The Kazan Cathedral on one side and the Dom Carnegie bookstore on the other. The wonderful view down Canal Grigdobova to picturesque Russian-style Church of the Spilled Blood. In addition to the many denomination churches that line Nevsky, which prompted the French writer Alexander Dumas to call it the Street of Religious Tolerance, there are many other attractions, such as the Grand Hotel of Europe, the Art Square, and the Russian Museum. Further down the road, you'll find the largest department store in the city, Gostiny Dvor, the Russian National Library, the second largest branch in the country, an impressive monument to Catherine the Great, and the Anikov Bridge adorned with 4 striking equestrian statues. Nevsky Prospekt is also the city's central shopping street and a hub for the city's entertainment and nightlife. SafetyWing's Nomad insurance is the world's first international travel insurance developed to meet the need of entrepreneurs and remote workers traveling or living abroad worldwide. It's the travel insurance that works for you around the world and covers COVID-19 or any other unexpected quarantine. If you want to have a sense of relief while traveling around the world, I would suggest getting SafetyWing's Nomad insurance. The link is in the description below if you want to find out more. Hotellook.com is a service that helps you find and compare prices on hotels around the world, providing a leading reservation system. Hotellook.com puts together information on more than 250,000 hotels in 205 countries, working with data from more than 10 online booking systems such as Booking.com, Agoda.com, Hotels.com, Expedia, and others. Use my link to look for hotels in St. Petersburg, Russia using Hotellook.com. Known as the Venice of the North, St. Petersburg's canals and bridges create a breathtaking atmosphere perfect for river cruises. From the rise of the Russian Empire to the Bolshevik Revolution, St. Petersburg has been at the heart of Russia's history. The city is an open-air museum of Baroque, Neoclassical, and Art Nouveau styles with landmarks like the Peter and Paul Fortress and the Church of the Savior on Spilled Blood. The city was home to Dostoevsky, Pushkov, and Tolstoy, and boasts world-class theaters and ballet performances. St. Petersburg is a city of grandeur and history. It's a sought-after destination for history buffs. In the next vlog, I'll be visiting the Hermitage Museum, Peterhof, and Catherine Palace.